My name is Laura Evans. I'm 33 years old, and for 5 years I gave everything I had to Stonebridge and Company, a mid-sized marketing firm in Seattle. Late nights, early mornings, weekend calls. And every single year when I brought up a raise, my boss, Megan Turner, smiled that thin corporate smile and said, "Let's revisit this next quarter." Next quarter became next year. Next year became never. But I swallowed it. I believed in loyalty. I believed hard work paid off. I believed in the promises Megan made in glossy staff meetings about growth opportunities and long-term success. I believed right up until the morning I stopped believing. It was a rainy Thursday in March. Typical Seattle weather. I was sitting across from Megan in her office, a glass-walled cube with a skyline view she never stopped reminding us she'd earned. She flipped through some client reports, not even pretending to read them. "Laura, we value your contributions," she said, eyes still on the papers. "But the company's priorities have shifted. Right now, salary adjustments aren't on the table." The same empty words, the same dead smile, the same voice that turned hard when you pushed back. I'd just wrapped a campaign that brought in $2.4 million in new business. My client feedback scores were the highest in the department. I'd trained 3 junior associates, the same ones Megan kept promoting over me. And still, I was making the exact salary I'd started with at 28. I took a breath. "Could we set a specific timeline to revisit this?" Her eyes finally met mine. Cold, calculated. "Laura, you need to think bigger. We're all making sacrifices. That's how teams win." I nodded, smiled, left her office with my heart pounding in my ears, past the reception desk where Tina was fielding back-to-back calls, past the open floor where junior staffers were glued to their monitors, past my desk, a corner cubicle with 5 years of files stacked high, and a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest employee." I sat in my car for 15 minutes before I started the engine. That night, for the first time in 5 years, I opened my laptop and pulled up job listings. Not to apply. Not yet. Just to see. I scrolled through postings at firms I'd once dreamed about. Companies that offered real development, competitive pay, and didn't treat loyalty like a trap. Market strategist, $110,000. Senior account manager, $125,000 plus bonus. Director of Client Partnerships, $140,000 with benefits. I bookmarked a few, closed the laptop, told myself it was curiosity, but something had shifted. 3 days later, Megan dropped a file on my desk without a word. The Glenmore Tech account renewal, a $3 million deal, on top of everything else I was managing. With a sticky note, "Make sure they understand our value." Our value. I wasn't worth a cost of living raise, but I was worth closing million-dollar deals on her behalf. I picked up the phone to call Glenmore. Then I stopped. What would happen if I stopped chasing Megan Turner's approval? What if loyalty wasn't a virtue, but a leash? I thought back to when I first joined Stonebridge, when Robert Stone, the founder, still walked the halls. He hired me personally after a 2-hour conversation about brand psychology and market dynamics. "You've got instincts," he'd said. "I can teach skills. Instinct is rare." 6 months later, Robert sold the company to a private equity firm. Megan Turner arrived with her buzzwords and efficiency plans. On her first day, she gathered the staff and talked about streamlining talent, performance-based retention, optimizing human capital. That's when I should have known employees weren't people to her, just numbers on a ledger. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I worked every project she threw at me, took on tasks outside my role, stayed late. And each time she rewarded me the same way. "Great work. You've got potential." Potential. That word lost meaning after the 3rd junior I trained became my team lead. I was raised to believe loyalty earned you respect. My dad spent 40 years at the same auto plant in Tacoma. He used to say, "Loyalty's like interest. The longer you invest, the more it pays off." But Stonebridge wasn't interested in loyalty. They were interested in squeezing every last drop out of people who wouldn't fight back. I'd watched 3 top performers leave in 6 months. I'd watched Megan replace them with interns and call it team growth. The office turned from collaborative to cutthroat. Information hoarded, credit stolen, sacrifices unnoticed. The warning signs had been there. And on that March afternoon, holding Glenmore's file in my hand, I finally saw them for what they were. That night, I clicked apply on a single job posting. Just one. And 3 days later, everything changed. It was a Monday morning when the email arrived. Subject line, interview invitation, Vantage Strategies. I stared at it for a good 30 seconds before opening it. Dear Laura, thank you for your application. We were impressed by your background and would like to invite you for an interview this Thursday at 10 a.m. Vantage Strategies, one of the fastest growing firms in the Pacific Northwest, known for innovation, competitive pay, and actually promoting from within. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. For 3 days, I kept my head down at Stonebridge. I handled the Glenmore Tech account. I stayed late. I smiled at Megan in meetings. But inside, something was different. I wasn't doing it for her anymore. I was doing it for me. Thursday came faster than I expected. I took a personal day, called in and said I had a family commitment. Half-truth. Sometimes you have to be family to yourself. The Vantage office was everything Stonebridge wasn't. Open spaces, natural light, real plants instead of dusty fake ones. The director, Hannah Price, met me in the lobby. Firm handshake, genuine smile. We followed your work with Glenmore and the Anderson Group, she said as we sat down. Your retention numbers and client feedback speak for themselves. For the first time in 5 years, someone actually valued what I'd done. No jargon, no empty praise, no next quarter. We talked strategy, client relationships, long-term vision. 2 hours later, Hannah leaned back in her chair. I think you'd be a great fit here, Laura. The role comes with a 30% salary increase, plus performance bonuses and a development budget. I blinked. You're serious? She smiled. Dead serious. We take care of our people here. If you're interested, we can move fast. I left the interview lightheaded, in the best way. By the time I got home, the official offer letter was sitting in my inbox. 30% more. Actual benefits. And a professional development stipend I didn't even know companies still offered. I sat on my couch, rereading the offer. 5 years at Stonebridge, and they'd never even mentioned a raise. Vantage met me once and saw my worth. It was an easy decision. I printed the offer, signed it, and scanned it back. Friday morning, I walked into the office with my heart pounding. I wasn't planning to quit on the spot. I still wanted to give notice, stay professional. But Megan had other plans. At 9:30 a.m., she called me into her office. I stepped inside, half expecting another let's touch base meeting. But her expression was different, cold, sharp. Close the door, she said. I did. She slid her phone across the desk, an email open on the screen, my LinkedIn profile. A recruiter from Vantage had commented on my post. A harmless, great catching up, something I hadn't even noticed. Megan's eyes locked on mine. Care to explain this? I stayed calm. I applied for a position at Vantage, on my own time, with my own resources. Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. So it's true. You've been job hunting behind my back. Behind her back? I wasn't sure when I'd signed a loyalty oath. Megan, She cut me off. I don't tolerate disloyalty, Laura. You've made your choice. She opened a drawer and pulled out a form. Your badge access is deactivated as of now. Pack your things. I blinked. You're firing me? For applying elsewhere? I'm terminating your employment for breach of trust. Disloyal employees deserve nothing. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because I was scared, but because I finally saw her for who she was. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and gave her the calmest smile I've ever given anyone. Then I wish you the best of luck, Megan. Her eyes narrowed. I turned, walked out of her office, and out of her control. No argument, no scene. Sometimes the loudest statement is walking away. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, typical for a Seattle spring. I woke up feeling strange, not anxious, not bitter, lighter. After 5 years of pushing through endless meetings, ignored requests, and corporate nonsense, I was officially done with Stonebridge and Company. I started my first day at Vantage Strategies, and the difference hit me the second I walked through the door. No forced smiles, no fake pep talks, just real people, doing real work in an office that didn't feel like a prison cell with free coffee. Hannah Price greeted me personally. "We're glad you're here, Laura." And for the first time in years, I believe someone meant those words. My onboarding wasn't a generic slideshow. It was a one-on-one conversation about goals, expectations, and what success would actually look like. And when we reviewed my client list, Hannah leaned in. "One more thing. We've heard Glenmore Tech is shopping around for new firms." I raised an eyebrow. "Glenmore? They've been with Stonebridge for years." Hannah smiled. "Not anymore. Apparently, their new account manager isn't meeting expectations." A strange mix of curiosity and quiet satisfaction stirred in me. Megan had reassigned my accounts the moment she fired me. Probably dumped them on some junior she could control. I wondered how that was going for her. Later that afternoon, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. "Laura, this is Nathan Kim from Glenmore Tech. Are you available to discuss a possible consulting partnership?" I stared at the text for a long moment before replying. "Absolutely. Let me know when works for you." I didn't need to ask what had happened. I already knew. By Wednesday, we'd scheduled a meeting. Glenmore's CEO, Nathan Kim, didn't waste time on small talk. We sat across from each other in a sleek downtown conference room, his assistant quietly closing the door behind us. "I'll be direct," Nathan said. "Since your departure, the service level at Stonebridge dropped fast. Deadlines missed, communication delays, it's been frustrating." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." He leaned forward. "I'm also aware of how much you handled personally, and how much we valued that." His meaning was clear. "We're open to moving our business, if you're interested in leading the account." I kept my voice even. "I'd be more than happy to discuss a partnership through Vantage." Nathan smiled. "That's what I was hoping to hear." By Friday, the deal was signed. Glenmore Tech, a $3 million account, officially moved to Vantage Strategies. And that's when things started to unravel. For Megan, I didn't reach out to her. I didn't have to. Seattle's business world isn't that big, especially in consulting. By Monday, I started getting texts from former colleagues, from clients, from people I barely knew. "Did you really land Glenmore at Vantage?" Megan's been in meetings all morning. Word is she's losing it. HR's scrambling. 2 more clients are looking to switch. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I got a message I didn't expect. It was from Tina, Stonebridge's receptionist, one of the kindest people I'd worked with. "Megan just sent a company-wide email, blaming you for client losses. She said you breached confidentiality. She's trying to make you look bad." I stared at the message, my chest tightening. So Megan hadn't just fired me. She was trying to burn my name on the way out. I felt the old anger rise for a second. Then I smiled. Because Megan Turner had just made a mistake. A big one. I wasn't worried about the gossip. I wasn't even worried about my reputation. I had signed a clean employment agreement with Vantage. I had no non-compete with Stonebridge. And Glenmore had approached me, not the other way around. But Megan? She'd just put false accusations in writing, company-wide. That wasn't just petty. That was grounds for legal action. And I knew exactly how to handle people like Megan Turner. Because some people think loyalty means silence. Some people think power means control. And some people learn the hard way what happens when you cross the line. I took a deep breath. Then I forwarded Tina's message to Hannah Price with a short note. Thought you should see this. Hannah replied 5 minutes later. Let's talk Monday morning. And Laura, you did the right thing. Megan thought she'd buried me. She had no idea. I was just getting started. Monday morning, I walked into Vantage Strategies with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Hannah Price waved me into her office before I even sat down at my desk. She closed the door behind us. I read the email Tina forwarded. I also spoke with legal. I nodded, sitting across from her. Hannah's expression was cool, professional, but her eyes flashed with something sharper. Megan Turner crossed a line. Defamation, written accusations, targeting a former employee in front of active clients. That's not just bad form. That's actionable. I leaned forward slightly. I didn't want to start a war. Hannah smiled. You didn't. She did. We'll handle it. That afternoon, Vantage's legal counsel sent a formal letter to Stonebridge and Company. A cease and desist, professional, director, unmistakable. Stonebridge was warned to retract the defamatory statements Megan had made, or face legal action for slander and tortious interference. It wasn't personal, it was business. But Megan? She'd made it very personal. The fallout began within 48 hours. I didn't have to reach out to anyone. Clients started reaching out to me. Laura, is it true you're with Vantage now? We'd love to work with you. We're rethinking our contract with Stonebridge. Maybe you could introduce us to your new firm? Turns out, when you treat employees like disposable parts, clients notice. And when those employees leave, so does the business. By Friday, Hannah pulled me aside again. 3 new clients signed this week, all from your former roster. She tapped a folder on her desk. And Glenmore Tech just increased their contract by 20%. They're adding a digital strategy project. I blinked. What? Hannah smiled. They said working with you restored their confidence. Seems Megan underestimated your value. We don't. That should have been enough. A clean break, a fresh start, a quiet victory. But Megan wasn't done, because bullies never are. The following Monday, Tina sent me another message. HR meeting this morning. Megan's under investigation. Apparently, she told upper management you poached clients. Now, Glenmore's CEO sent a letter to Stonebridge, clearing your name. It's bad. Like, really bad. I read the message twice. A cold weight settled in my chest. I hadn't asked Glenmore for anything, but they'd gone out of their way to defend me. That spoke louder than anything I could have done myself. The story spread fast in the consulting world. Stonebridge's leadership launched an internal review. Megan's decisions and behavior were suddenly under a magnifying glass. And once people started looking, they didn't like what they saw. Megan had burned through half the senior staff in under 2 years. Client retention was at an all-time low. Employee turnover was spiking. Her leadership style, the one she thought made her untouchable, had become a liability. I got a call from Robert Stone himself. The founder of Stonebridge, long retired. I hadn't spoken to him since the early days. Laura. His voice was calm but firm. I want you to know, I'm deeply sorry for how you were treated. This isn't the company I built. I wasn't sure what to say. Thank you, Robert. He hesitated. I'm stepping back in, temporarily. The partners asked me to consult on certain leadership matters. I hope it's not too late to fix what's been broken. I believed him, but I also knew. Sometimes you can't fix something that doesn't want to be fixed. A week later, the official announcement hit the business journals. Stonebridge and Company announces leadership restructuring. Megan Turner departs effective immediately. No flowery language, no spin, just a quiet corporate exit. But in this industry, everyone knew what that meant. She wasn't stepping down. She was being pushed out. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory dance, just a quiet sense of closure. Megan Turner had fired me, humiliated me, and tried to destroy my reputation. And now? She'd lost everything she thought made her powerful. Because here's the truth. Loyalty works both ways. And when you weaponize loyalty against people, don't be surprised when it blows up in your face. I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. Because Megan wasn't done with me yet. I thought it was over. Megan Turner had been fired. Stonebridge and Company was scrambling to clean up the mess she left behind. I'd moved on, thriving at Vantage Strategies, with clients who respected me and a team that valued my work. But people like Megan, they don't go quietly. It started with a LinkedIn notification. Megan Turner viewed your profile. Harmless, right? Except 2 days later, I got a call from a recruiter I'd known for years. Hey, Laura, off the record. Did you know Megan's been asking around about you? She's spreading rumors that you violated confidentiality agreements. My stomach turned. Megan wasn't just bitter. She was trying to blacklist me. And in a tight-knit industry like consulting, one bad whisper can follow you for years. I sat in my office staring at the city skyline. I could have ignored it, hoped it would blow over, focused on my work and let her fade into irrelevance. But then I remembered what my dad used to say. You don't teach people a lesson by letting them think they got away with it. I didn't retaliate. I didn't send angry emails. I didn't stoop to Megan's level. I gathered facts. Every message, every rumor confirmed by recruiters, every traceable action Megan had taken. Hannah and Vantage's legal team reviewed everything. And then, they contacted the Pacific Northwest Consulting Association, the industry body that oversees ethical conduct for member firms and consultants. Turns out, Megan had violated their code of conduct. Repeatedly. Defamation, malicious interference, professional misconduct. They opened a formal investigation. 2 months later, Megan Turner's name was officially removed from the association's registry. In simple terms, she was blacklisted. No major firm in the region would touch her after that. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Because this wasn't revenge. It was accountability. A few weeks after the announcement, I got a message. A short clipped email from Megan herself. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. What I wanted was to work in a place where respect goes both ways. What you wanted was control. We both got what we earned. I hit send. No more. No less. That was the last time I ever heard from Megan Turner. Over the next year, I grew my client portfolio at Vantage beyond anything I'd imagined. Glenmore Tech, Silverline Industries, Harper Logistics. Accounts that trusted me, not because I chased approval, but because I earned respect. Hannah promoted me to Director of Client Partnerships before my first anniversary. 35% salary increase, equity participation, flexible schedule, all the things I'd begged for at Stonebridge. Given freely by people who saw value where Megan saw a pawn. One evening, over drinks with Hannah and the leadership team, we talked about leadership and how it can make or break a company. I told them the truth. I stayed at Stonebridge for 5 years, hoping loyalty would pay off. All it did was teach me that loyalty means nothing to people who don't value it. Hannah raised her glass. And now? I smiled. Now I know loyalty's not something you owe. It's something you choose, when it's earned. We clinked glasses. I never thought I'd be grateful for Megan Turner, but in a way, I was. She taught me a lesson I'd carry with me for the rest of my career, and maybe my life. Loyalty isn't about blind obedience. It's about mutual respect. And the moment respect ends, loyalty becomes a cage. I built a career I was proud of, not because I stayed silent, but because I walked away when silence meant losing myself. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with freedom. And that is the most satisfying ending of all. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. The office looked the same. The humming of computers, the stale scent of printer paper, the morning sun casting golden stripes across my desk. But nothing was the same. Because the man who now stood in front of us wasn't my boss. He was my boss's son, and he had just inherited the company. "Good morning, everyone," he said, clapping his hands together like he was starting a motivational seminar. "As of this morning, I'm the new CEO." A polite, scattered round of applause followed. I didn't clap. Not because I was bitter, at least not yet, but because I already knew what kind of person he was. I had worked at Hamilton Tech Solutions for 17 years. I was there before his father even bought the building. I had helped build the infrastructure, wrote the very code the company ran on, designed the internal systems, and trained every new IT staff member myself. I wasn't just an employee. I was the backbone. But to Jason Hamilton, I was just another face in the crowd. An outdated relic from a time he wanted to erase. His father, Richard Hamilton, was nothing like him. Richard was old school but fair. He believed in loyalty and he appreciated dedication. He wasn't a tech genius, far from it, but he knew the value of the people who made things run. When his health started declining, he stepped back and left the company in good hands. At least, that's what he thought. I watched Jason as he strutted through the office like he was doing us a favor by existing. Designer suit, hair slicked back, jaw tight with smug ambition. He had a point to prove, and unfortunately that meant cleaning house. "Some changes are coming," he said with a fake smile. "Efficiency, optimization, streamlining. The usual. Some of you may not fit into the new vision of Hamilton Tech." I felt the eyes of my team drift toward me. They knew. Jason never liked me. Not because I did anything wrong. On the contrary. I had caught one of his disastrous coding attempts during an internship he barely showed up for. I saved the company from a major system breach he nearly caused. I didn't throw him under the bus back then. Maybe I should have. Later that afternoon, I got the email. "Meeting at 4 p.m. CEO's office. Jason Hamilton." I didn't panic. Not yet. I gathered my notes and calmly walked in. He didn't even look up when I entered. "Sit," he said coldly. I sat. He closed his laptop with a smug little flourish and leaned back. "Lisa, you've been here a long time." "Yes, almost 2 decades," I said. He smirked. "Exactly. A long time to be doing—" "What exactly? Patching legacy code? Babysitting the system?" I stayed silent. I knew where this was going. He leaned forward, his voice sharper now. "I won't spend another dime on a worthless employee. You're done here." I nodded slowly, my heart pounding, but my face calm. "Got it." Jason blinked as if he expected me to beg or argue. When I didn't, he smirked again. "Smart. At least you're not dramatic." I stood up, pushed the chair back gently, and turned to leave. "Oh, and HR will reach out about severance," he added, almost as an afterthought. I paused at the door. "Per the contract I signed with your father, severance is automatic, but you might want to check the terms of that agreement." He looked confused, but I didn't wait for a response. I walked out. Not just from his office, from the entire building. And when I got home, I opened my laptop. Because there was something Jason didn't know. When Richard promoted me to head systems architect 3 years ago, he added a very specific clause to my contract. One Jason hadn't bothered to read. One that gave me control. Control over every internal system, every access point, every security layer. And if I was ever terminated without just cause, I had the legal right to wipe the slate clean. I wasn't vengeful by nature. But what Jason had done wasn't just cruel. It was stupid. Because now he'd have to learn very quickly what this worthless employee was actually worth. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset. I had long since learned not to take corporate betrayal personally, but because I was preparing. Every system, every line of code, every security protocol I had designed over the years was now in my hands. Jason had no idea what he'd signed off on. 3 years ago, when Richard promoted me to head systems architect, I told him something very specific. If I'm going to take full accountability for every system this company depends on, I need protection. Richard agreed. He trusted me. He valued me. So, together with the company's legal team, we drafted a clause that most CEOs would never allow. If I were ever terminated without just cause or severance, as defined by the contract, I had full authority to revoke my access, shut down all administrator rights, and remove proprietary system integrations. In short, I could wipe it clean. The clause was buried halfway through the contract under Emergency System Governance. I doubted Jason had read past the title page. The next morning, I woke up, brushed my hair, made some coffee, and sat down at my desk with a deep breath. I opened the remote systems dashboard. Every critical platform was still tied to my credentials. Jason hadn't even reassigned permissions. HR hadn't contacted me. No exit interview. No formal handover. He really thought I'd just vanish quietly. I hovered my mouse over the Emergency Lockdown Protocol tab and clicked. Immediately, a chain reaction began. Employee portal, deactivated payroll access, locked internal messaging platform, shut down CRM and client contact systems, frozen servers, still active but restricted from internal access. One by one, I watched the lifeblood of the company pulse, and then flicker out. I didn't delete anything. That would have been illegal. But per the clause, I had the right to disable access until a legal resolution was reached. It was a nuclear option designed for worst-case scenarios. This qualified. By noon, my phone was buzzing. Block number, then again, then a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Mark, senior IT analyst. Hey, something's wrong with the system. Everything's going dark. Did you do something? Jason is losing it. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, a call came in from the company's front desk. I ignored it. Then, finally, Jason called. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I answered, calm as ever. Lisa speaking. What? Did you do? He barked, not even pretending to be civil. I could hear panic in the background. Phones ringing, people shouting, the hollow tone of someone who had completely lost control. I followed the contract. I said simply, you should read it sometime. You shut down the entire system, he shouted. No, I said. I locked access to it. There's a difference. You're insane. No, Jason, I'm prepared. You made a decision without understanding the consequences. That's on you. I could hear him pacing now. He was furious, but underneath that, he was scared. He didn't understand how the systems worked. He thought firing me was just crossing off a name. He never realized how much I had built. How do I fix this? He asked, his voice sharp but quieter now. You don't, I replied. You're not authorized to make changes. There was a long pause. Then quietly. So what do you want? I could have said money. I could have demanded a massive payout, or an apology, or even my job back. But none of that mattered anymore. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. I want you to admit you were wrong, I said. Publicly. Not just to me. To your team. To your board. To the people who watched you dismantle a company you weren't ready to lead. He laughed bitterly. You think I'm going to humiliate myself over this? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. I think you don't have a choice. Then I hung up. I spent the rest of the day answering messages from my former coworkers. Some were stunned. Others were quietly cheering me on. They'd seen the writing on the wall the moment Jason took over. But none of them knew what was coming next, because Jason had just made the biggest mistake of his short career, and by the end of the week, he would be begging for help. 2 days. That's all it took for chaos to spread through Hamilton Tech like wildfire. The systems I had locked down weren't just a convenience. They were the company's central nervous system. Payroll didn't process. Client accounts became inaccessible. Customer service couldn't reply to tickets. Even the office coffee machine was glitching because it ran on the same cloud-linked admin panel I had architected. By the third morning, I got a text from an unknown number. The board is calling an emergency session today. Jason's in trouble. Just thought you'd want to know. No name, but I had a good guess. Mark? Maybe. Or someone from accounting. I had quietly earned the trust of more people in that office than Jason ever realized. Meanwhile, I was back to my freelance consulting work. My own clients, my own hours, my peace. But as much as I tried to ignore it, a part of me kept refreshing the news alerts and company chatter. Because this wasn't just about justice anymore. This was about watching a house of arrogance fall, brick by brick. Later that afternoon, the call came. Not from Jason this time. From a private number. "Miss Carter, this is Diane Hart from the Board of Directors. We need to speak with you." Her tone was crisp, measured, the voice of someone used to holding power, but trying to stay polite. "Of course," I said. "When?" "As soon as possible. We'd like to meet over video in the next hour if you're available." She wasn't asking. I joined the call in a crisp black blazer, hair tied back, the same way I used to look when giving quarterly IT updates. 6 board members sat in sleek chairs behind polished mahogany tables. In the center of the screen, Jason, looking like a deflated version of himself. Collar loose, eyes red. His swagger had vanished. "Lisa," Diane began, "we understand there's been a disruption to our internal systems." "That's correct," I replied evenly. "And you were the architect behind those systems?" "I was," I said, "for the past 6 years. And per the clause in your executive contract, you had authority to revoke access in the event of wrongful termination?" "Only under specific conditions. Yes," I said, leaning slightly forward. "One of which was termination without severance." Jason shifted. I could tell he wanted to interject, but he didn't. He couldn't. "And you were offered no severance?" Diane asked. "I was not. Jason called me into his office, told me I was worthless, and that he wouldn't spend another dime on me." Silence. A few board members exchanged glances. Someone coughed awkwardly. Diane turned to Jason. "Is that true?" Jason cleared his throat. "Look, I didn't think she'd actually answer the question." He glanced away. "I didn't review her contract fully. I thought it was boilerplate." I raised my eyebrows. "It wasn't." Diane took a slow breath. "So, just to clarify, the systems are not deleted, but access is restricted?" "Correct," I said. "They're secure, no data loss. I followed the protocol exactly as written." "And what would it take to restore access?" I paused. I wanted to make this clear, not just for them, but for Jason. An official retraction of my termination, a signed letter acknowledging the breach of contract, and a formal public apology from Mr. Hamilton. Jason's head snapped toward the camera. "Are you serious?" "I'm very serious," I said. "You publicly humiliated me. You terminated me without cause, without severance, and without any understanding of the systems I designed. You don't just get to press undo." Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "We'll take your terms under advisement. Thank you, Ms. Carter." I logged off. That evening, I took a walk. The sky was low with gray clouds, the kind of soft overcast that made the streetlights glow like halos. 17 years. That's how long I gave that company. Through late nights, system failures, mergers, and panic mode deadlines, I stayed. I delivered. I never asked for more than what I earned. And Jason dismissed all of it with a single sentence. But now? Now he was learning something his father had understood from day one. Loyalty is earned, not inherited. I didn't want to destroy the company, but I wasn't going to save it at my own expense. And if Jason wanted to keep pretending he was in control, he was going to watch the entire machine fall apart without me. Jason didn't apologize. Not that day. Not the next. Not even after the company's main clients began to pull their contracts. He was still convinced he could fix it. I heard through a friend in accounting, off the record of course, that Jason had brought in an external IT firm. They promised they could regain system access within 72 hours. What they didn't know was that I had built it like a fortress, not to be vengeful, to be secure. Because the kinds of systems Hamilton Tech relied on housed sensitive data: legal documents, employee records, payroll structures, internal audits, client contracts. When Richard gave me full autonomy, he also trusted me to design protections in case of a breach. Ironically, I became the breach Jason hadn't seen coming. By the fourth day, the board was under pressure. Key vendors were threatening legal action. The finance department couldn't process invoices. And several government contracts, ones that required stringent security compliance, were on the verge of cancellation. That evening, my phone rang again. It wasn't Diane. It was Richard. Yes, Richard Hamilton, the founder, Jason's father. Lisa, he said, his voice slower than I remembered, but firm. I heard what happened. Hello, Mr. Hamilton, I said, surprised. I wasn't expecting your call. I should have called earlier. I've been out of it lately. But Diane briefed me. I read everything, including the contract you and I signed. There was a pause. He cleared his throat. I want you to know, I stand by that agreement. I gave you that power because you earned it, and I see now how necessary it was. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. He hesitated. Would you be open to a meeting? Just you and me. No board, no Jason. I agreed. The next afternoon, I met him at a quiet cafe just outside the city. He looked older, frailer, but his eyes were still sharp. I trusted Jason to lead with wisdom, he said after we sat down. Instead, he led with ego. He looked directly at me. You were the one person I knew would protect the foundation of what we built. And now, you're the one person who can save it. I didn't reply right away. I watched him sip his tea, the cup trembling slightly in his hands. I'm not asking you to forgive him, he said. I'm asking if you'll help fix this, for the sake of the company, for the people who still depend on it. My jaw tightened. He called me worthless, in front of his staff, terminated me like I was nothing. If I come back, I want it to mean something. Richard nodded. I understand, and I think it's time we talk about that. He slid a document across the table. It was a formal offer, not for reinstatement, but for partnership. Co-ownership, permanent rights to the system I built, a public acknowledgement of my role in Hamilton Tech's growth, and full authority to oversee the transition to new leadership. Jason? I asked, eyebrows raised. We'll be stepping down, Richard said firmly. After the board meeting tomorrow, he doesn't know yet, but it's already in motion. I blinked. And who replaces him? Richard smiled. We're open to nominations. It didn't hit me right away, but when it did, I shook my head. I don't want to run the company. I didn't say you had to, he replied, but you should be the one helping choose who does. That night, I reviewed the documents. Everything was real. The contract was airtight. And for the first time since I walked out of that building, I had peace. But I also had one more decision to make. The next morning, I stood in front of the board again. This time, not as a disgraced employee or a desperate contractor. I stood as someone whose value had finally been acknowledged. Jason was there too, eyes hollow, shoulders heavy. He didn't speak. Diane turned to me. Lisa, do you wish to restore the system? I nodded. Yes, under one condition. Which is? That the entire IT department receives back pay for the hours they've worked trying to clean up someone else's mess, and that every engineer under my former team gets a raise and permanent status. Diane looked impressed. Done. I entered the admin panel on my laptop, typed a few commands. Hit execute. The lights flickered on at Hamilton Tech. The heartbeat returned. I looked at Jason one last time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't need him to. This wasn't his story anymore. The system was back online. Emails were flowing. Salaries were processed. Clients returned. From the outside, it looked like the storm had passed. But inside me, something still lingered. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt powerful. But all I felt was tired. 17 years. 17 years of late nights and early mornings, of eating lunch at my desk, of fixing what others broke, of holding up a company that never once made the effort to hold me back. And when I thought of how quickly Jason had tossed it all away with one sentence, "I won't spend another dime on a worthless employee," a quiet ache settled behind my ribs. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about worth, and how easily the world can pretend not to see it. I spent the next week transitioning the IT systems over to a new team, one I personally helped hire. I didn't want my name to be the only one holding up the infrastructure anymore. If I had learned anything, it was this. No one should ever be a single point of failure. Not even me. One afternoon, I found myself back in the old server room. The hum of machines, the blinking lights, the faint chill of recycled air. It was all exactly how I remembered it. Except now, I wasn't there to fix anything. I was there to say goodbye. Mark, my former colleague, found me there. "I heard Jason moved out of the executive suite today," he said softly. I nodded. "About time." He never said a word to anyone, just packed up and left. "Did you expect him to?" I asked. Mark shrugged. "Number. But I hoped maybe he'd at least say something to you." "I don't need his words," I said. He already gave me his silence when it mattered. Mark smiled faintly. "You know, we all watched what you did. Every single one of us. And we weren't just impressed, we were proud." That caught me off guard. "Proud?" "Yeah," he said. "You stood up for all of us. For every employee who's ever been undervalued. For every woman who's ever been told she's just something. For everyone who's ever been discarded by someone who thought a title meant intelligence." I blinked. My throat tightened unexpectedly. "You made us believe again, Lisa," he added. I had no words, just a quiet, grateful smile. That weekend, I visited my parents' grave. I hadn't been in months. They were both teachers, modest people who believed in effort over ego. When I first got the job at Hamilton Tech, they celebrated like I'd won the lottery. When I worked late into the night, they brought me food. When I was overlooked for promotion after promotion, they told me to keep going. I sat down between the headstones and rested my palms on the grass. "I did it," I whispered. "Not just for me, for everyone like me. For every person who was told they weren't enough. For every worker who got laid off with nothing but an empty box and a forced smile. For every unseen genius sitting in the back of a cubicle, making everything run while someone else took the credit." I stayed for a while, just breathing, listening to the wind in the trees, letting the silence wrap around me like a coat. The following Monday, I returned to the company one last time. Richard had asked me to come in, not for work, but for a formal ceremony. They wanted to honor me. I had hesitated, but eventually said yes. The entire company gathered in the main atrium. There were speeches, clapping, even a few tears. Then Richard stepped forward. He handed me a glass plaque etched with gold lettering. It read, "For 17 years of dedication, brilliance, and unshakable integrity, Lisa Carter." The applause that followed was long, loud, and sincere. But what moved me most was the line of employees who waited afterward just to shake my hand. Young engineers, admin staff, janitors, managers, people from every department. One woman, fresh out of college, held my hand a moment longer than the others. "I want to be like you someday," she said. I smiled. "Then be better than me. Start with that." That night, I went home, lit a candle, made some tea. And finally, for the first time in years, I slept without setting an alarm. Because I knew the company would be fine. And more importantly, so would I. 2 months had passed since the day I restored Hamilton Tech systems. Life had returned to normal, at least on the surface. The company was running again, its operations smooth, its future no longer dangling by a thread. But Jason Hamilton had vanished from the tech world almost as quickly as he'd stormed into it. Word got around fast. Investors pulled out. Clients questioned the company's leadership. Board members whispered about the embarrassment he had caused. And just like that, the golden boy who once smirked at me from behind a mahogany desk was gone. No new title, no shiny venture, just radio silence. I didn't celebrate. Not out loud. I didn't post about it. I didn't gloat. Because I didn't need to. People like Jason implode all on their own. They think power is inherited, not earned. They think people are replaceable. They think they'll never fall. Until they do. And when they finally crash, it's not the sound of impact that matters. It's the silence that follows. One afternoon, while sipping coffee in my home office, I got a message from someone unexpected. "Hey, it's been a while. Can I call?" Jason. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't owe him anything, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. His voice was quieter than I remembered. No arrogance, no smirk in his tone. Just exhaustion. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from," he began. "You're not wrong," I said calmly. There was a pause. I just wanted to say, I was wrong. About everything. I didn't reply. I let the silence stretch. Let it sting a little. "I didn't understand what you did. How much you carried. I thought, I don't know, that tech was just tools. Replaceable. I thought loyalty was optional." "It's not," I finally said. "It never was." "I've lost everything," he admitted. "Even my dad doesn't return my calls anymore." "That's between you and him," I said. "Not my business." He sighed. "You don't have to forgive me. I just needed to say it. Then say it clearly." He took a breath. "I'm sorry, Lisa, for disrespecting you, for underestimating you, for not reading the damn contract. You didn't deserve any of that." I let his words hang there for a moment before answering. "Apology accepted," I said, "but don't mistake that for forgetting." I wouldn't dare. And that was it. He hung up. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Not because I needed his apology, but because hearing it reminded me how far I'd come. A few weeks later, I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for my own company's new office. Carter Systems. It wasn't flashy. No marble floors, no glass walls. Just clean desks, fast computers, and a team of sharp, passionate engineers. Some of them from my old Hamilton team. Others, fresh graduates with eyes full of wonder. I gave a short speech. Nothing grand. Just the truth. "I built my career in the shadows," I said. "I was called just an employee, overlooked, undervalued, underpaid. But I kept building, because I believed in what I could do, even when others didn't." I paused, looked around the room. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your worth is not determined by who sees you. It's determined by what you create, how you show up, and how you carry yourself when no one's watching. The applause that followed wasn't loud, but it was real. And in that moment, I didn't feel tired anymore. I felt whole. Today, I spend my days mentoring young tech professionals. I teach them not just how to write code, but how to write contracts, how to protect themselves, how to say no, how to demand respect. Hamilton Tech still exists, but it looks different now. Richard quietly retired. A new CEO, a woman named Dana, took over. She reached out to me for guidance during the transition. I told her one thing. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of the company. It's a lesson some never learn, and for others, it changes everything. As for Jason, last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment on the edge of the city. No one calls him Mr. Hamilton anymore. And in the tech world, his name is rarely spoken. But mine? It's on contracts now, on invoices, on systems, on the front door of a company I built from the ground up. Lisa Carter. Not a worthless employee, not a forgotten name, but a builder, a fighter, a woman who rewrote her own ending.